Welcome to the Caddo Convos, the podcast that explores the vibrant community of businesses thriving in Caddo Office Reimagined. We're here to shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and professionals who make the most of our private offices, co-working spaces, and day office rentals in the Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs. Join us as we share their stories, celebrate their successes, and dive into the benefits of working in a space that's close to home but offers so much more than working from home. Let's get started with today's conversation. Joining me today on the Caddo Convos is Wes Keeton of the Keeton Group. Wes, thank you for being in the studio today.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate the invite.
Great. So let's just jump right in and talk about the benefits you bring to the customers. Why should they do business with you?
Yeah. So my primary client are small business owners. I work with affluent professionals as well, but small business owners is where my passion lies. You know, most of them are faced with many problems. The key problems that I work on are largely around if they have partners, all right, how do we take care of the partners? If one's no longer around, that would involve a buy-sell agreement. We also help them replace some of the financing out there. And what I mean by that is businesses oftentimes use banks for loans and whatnot. We're able to take that internal to where they can actually create their own private banking system.
Oh, that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, you know, oftentimes with business owners, and when I talk with them, they're frustrated with banks oftentimes, but that is really their own. They got to have cash flow, All right? And they got to have things that bridge cash flow. So it could be a bridge loan, it could just be a traditional loan because they want to grow. I mean, the businesses that I work with are almost all in growth mode, all right? Well, to do that, you need capital. All right. And so capital, especially these days with interest rates going up, has been a pain point for a lot of business owners out there. Capital was pretty cheap a couple of years ago. It's gotten a lot more expensive recently. All right. The other thing about banks, pretty fascinating. I think we all inherently know this, but to experience it is altogether a lot different. Banks want to lend you money when you don't need it.
That's so true.
They don't want to lend you money when you need it. And so what we seek to do is create effectively their internal private banking system to where they control the banking function inside of the small business. So they're creating their own pool of capital to use ever how they want to do it without any credit checks, without any approvals. They control that function.
That's really great. Mm-hmm. Tell me, how long have you been in business?
23 years.
Oh, yeah. So you've been at it a while, and definitely have seen a lot of rise and falls in the market.
Correct.
And met a lot of businesses at their worst, especially some recent falls in that time.
Yep.
Right. Interesting. Tell me, who's your ideal customer? Let's say of the percentage, say 80%, we would like to be this type of customer.
Yeah. So again, I go back to locally owned, so Dallas-Fort Worth area, small business owner. Typically, they'll have between 5 to 50 employees, sometimes more, up to 100. That's typically where I find I have the most traction with business owners out there. They oftentimes have a partner, all right? And again, like I said earlier, they're in that growth mode, so they're seeking to expand, but do so without, out kicking your coverage, if you will. We've seen that happen where businesses grow too quickly, they overextend, and problems can happen when there are downturns, which invariably are going to happen.
Let's talk about your process. Mm-hmm. Let's say I fit in the people we just mentioned.
Yeah.
I have a business partner, in theory. So we find you and set up a first call. What is that first call like?
Generally, with business owners, I almost always prefer to meet them person to person, face to face. In our business, we call it belly to belly. So much is done virtual these days, which I'm certainly equipped to do. But I want to get a feel for the business, and there's nothing like stepping foot on the property, getting a feel. There's a vibe that every businesses have. Seeing the employees, are they happy? Are they unhappy? Are they, running full bore? Are they not doing a lot? So just that overall vibe helps even before I even, truly get into it with the business owner. You can almost feel that just stepping foot into the business. Experience also helps with that as well.
Yeah, with 23 years,
right.
You've seen the outcome of that first assessment.
Correct.
And where it goes. Continue.
Yeah. So, just effectively having a conversation with the business owner. It's all about ultimately solving problems. What are the current problems they're facing? And can I add value and help solve their problems? One thing I'm very clear with when I meet a business owner is I will not waste their time. If I know that I am not of value, I will tell them that sooner than later. And almost invariably, all of them appreciate that. It's interesting because when I first started out as a financial advisor, most financial advisors out there are actually investment advisors. And that's a key distinction. Okay. So investment advisors want to do what? They want to manage money. And I learned through business owners that most financial advisors frustrate business owners because they'll say, if you don't have a large 401k to manage, they'll oftentimes say, hey, when you sell your business, give me a call.
But not until I can't help you.
But there's so many things that happen between then. And in talking with business owners, I sense a frustration. I'm like, you know what? There's a lot that goes on, particularly if they have a partner. All right. So what happens if one of the partners, I don't know, gets killed in a car accident? All right. Yeah, now they're in business with the spouse, whether they like it or not. Is there an agreement set up in place? How is that business going to continue to function? I mean, these are things that will absolutely take a business down.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't imagine the stress of dealing with that.
Absolutely. And the second thing is, what if they aren't able to access capital to grow? What if they go through a downturn? What if accounts receivable is having, inordinate delays? I mean, these things can put a business under because they got cash flows everything to a business.
You bet.
We all know that as business owners. And so making sure that runs efficiently to keep the employees happy. Another thing we look at is I want to get a feel for who their key employees are. What's interesting, Buddy, is business owners will tell me behind closed doors without the key person in earshot, they're like, hey, Wes, no matter what, I cannot lose this person.
Yep.
All right. And the reason they don't want the other person to know is they don't want it to be a point of leverage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And however, so they'll say, what can we do to create a plan effectively like a golden handcuffs to where, they get to stick around. There's incentives for them to stick around because truth be known, I wake up at 2:00 in the morning. By the way, that's when our fear level is at its absolute highest.
Oh yeah.
Early in the
morning.
I live
that dream.
And I'm like, what happens if that key person leaves? Because they're coveted. Our fellow competitors know it. And so we can set up certain things to help them. All right. Keep that person around and also take care of other things like their family.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And then going back to the agreements with the partners, making sure that they have a proper agreement set up and more importantly, that it's funded with the right thing. Typically, life insurance is the most efficient to do that.
Once you have this first call, you set up a process, you set up a contract, and
Sure.
You're working with them. How long does your relationship last? Is it the life of the business typically or ideally?
Yeah, interesting with business owners is we like to say in our business, they're virtually evergreen because in a small business, it's interesting. I'll get the phone call that I'm not expecting and something has happened. Either they're buying another business, they're buying out the partner, they're selling the business. They've taken on a huge client that they may not have capacity for. And ultimately, with the best clients that I have, they look at me as sort of a quarterback, a go-to person.
Yeah.
Hey, Wes, what would you do? Because I coordinate a lot of things. If they need help on their commercial property and casualty, while I'm licensed to do that, I do not take that on. All right? I have professionals that do it. I'm a believer, stay in your lane. Yeah. And ones that venture out of that lane, I typically do not want to bring them in as a partner because I need them to be an expert in that particular discipline.
That makes
sense. Which, by the way, investment advisors are very good at. I no longer do that because I don't want to be to the cathlete, which is, decent in all 10 events. I want to be good in one or two and be an expert. So I've shed a lot of business lines, mainly so I can serve these business owners even better than I have been before.
Give me an example of a success story. In 23 years, you've taken people from probably a complete mess, sure. And I'm not saying whoever you're going to talk about is that to success.
Correct. Had a client recently. I took them on about 3 years ago. They're a contractor. They buy a lot of equipment. They need capital to do so. Sure. They were frustrated with the banks because they got turned down. The interest rate was too high for the like. And this is actually before rates started ticking up. And they're like, hey, what can we do? They had a fair amount of cash on hand, but like a lot of business owners, they just kind of keep that powder dry. By the way, the cash was earning nothing in the account.
Just sitting there.
Yeah, and the cash had to be at that respective bank because that's where the loan was, but it was earning 0% interest. And this is a significant amount of cash. So we were able to, over time, over a couple of years, shift a portion of that cash over into effectively a private banking vehicle, is permanent whole life insurance, to where that cash became readily available for them to use as a loan provision inside of the policy. So they're able to use it, and instead they can leave the bank out, use their own money, it continues to grow, and then pay themselves back over time. So they're capturing the interest that the bank got, they're bringing that in-house. Yeah. But more importantly, it's private, it's secured, all right? It's creditor protected. It also, there's no tax implications in doing so, which is huge. I've never met a business owner that wasn't overly concerned with taxes. All right.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah. And then they control that function. So, but this, this doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, but it was really cool. They needed to go out and buy a tractor. It was really cool for them to self-finance that significant piece of equipment. And they paid themselves back at a rate much lower than they would have at the bank.
You had mentioned, what keeps you up at night. We all have that problem. Let's talk about your why, as in what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Sure. Yeah, the big thing, when I was in the investment world, that is a profitable business for people that do well, all right? It just didn't move my needle.
Okay.
All right. I'm not interested in taking $1 and making it $1.05 next year, net of all returns. Moreover, we have plenty of people to do that. I largely think it's commoditized. I mean, there's plenty of people in the Dallas area throughout the United States that will quote unquote manage money. Some of my very good friends do that, and they're very good at it. I truly wanted to solve problems for business owners. And that came through an evolution of having a lot of meetings with them and hearing the similar recurring themes about what they're experiencing. Cash flow issues, key person issues, partner issues, because having a partner in a business is a challenge. Oftentimes you'll get a yin and yang element. One will be really good at rainmaking, another one back end operations, but sometimes they'll butt heads as the business grows. What do those challenges bring? And then managing the day-to-day stuff, which quite frankly, they don't want to mess with a 401k, but they have to have it because it validates the business for recruiting purposes. You got to have a 401k plan, right, even though they're a pain in the rear to manage. So making sure these respective parts are done correctly. And there's a huge gap in the traditional financial advising space because, as I alluded to earlier, they are really not equipped to handle that. So two things. Number one, there was a gap there. And secondly, I love that side of the business. So it's like, all right, let's go full force. And that's what I did 6 years ago. Said, this is exclusively what I'm doing. I no longer have a securities license.
Right.
All right. I no longer do that. So that breeds an element of clarity. This is what I do, and this is what I don't do.
Right.
And it's interesting, buddy, oftentimes, and I say this to business owners, we end up landing where we are by starting with what we don't want to do. And then the end becomes almost clear. I'm sure your business.
You have to go through that.
You got to go through that.
It's a process both in business and in your own mind.
That's right. What do I not like doing? What doesn't move the needle? And the thing is, profit is a short-term motivator. And I always kind of joke with my friends, if it was purely about profit, we'd all be trial lawyers.
Or at least try.
It's just, but that's not, that, there's a more of a soul attached to what we do meaning over time. Yeah. And especially as you get older. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm in my 50s.
Same.
As you can see, I have gray hair.
Yeah. We're looking across the table.
Exactly.
Might as well be a mirror.
You start to accrue some wisdom. And it's like, I'm just not going to do that anymore. And so I love using my skill set, which is in alignment to hopefully solve problems for business owners.
Yep.
All right. And hearing their pain points, I'm like, we probably can add value. Not everyone's a fit. That's okay. All right. That's fine. I want to know that early on,
of course,
versus, a month down the road, like, why are we even continuing this relationship?
Right.
There are other people that are better suited. And I will tell them that.
Right. And those people, so you can direct them right.
That's absolutely.
Look for this type of person, or I know someone that can help.
Hey, you're a better fit. And by the way, the personalities need to match.
That's so true.
I mean, we have a rule in the agency. I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but really, people, we want to work with people that enjoy our value.
Right.
All right. We're not going to be held over a barrel. And we've all experienced clients that, while they may be profitable, all right, they're not the best fit. And I call it the caller ID. All right. If that phone rings and I see the caller ID, I need to be excited to take the call.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Versus like, oh my gosh, it's so and so.
Them again.
Yeah. And if I have several of those in a row, then maybe it's time we part ways.
Yeah. Because those will wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's
as well.
Right.
That's and they may call you at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah. It's just not worth it.
Not
Interesting.
worth it.
What's the best way to contact you?
Best way is oftentimes it's just through text.
Oh,
just
really?
Through my number, like, hey, let's set up a time. They can go to the website, thekeatongroup.com. I'm easy to get a hold of.
Okay.
Email is fine, but
Sure.
Texting these days is probably the easiest. I saw a message or a stat the other day. It says like 93% of text messages are opened and read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's just people's preferred form of communication. They can certainly call me, leave a voicemail, but yeah, for most folks, that tends to be the easiest out there.
And as I mentioned before the show, Wes, and for our listeners and viewers, just scroll down. The information he's given me is in the show notes.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You'll be able to find Wes and his team there. Parting thoughts, advice you can give to someone who's on the fence of working with someone like you.
The worst thing that can happen is we have a conversation. You're probably going to walk away with something that may help you out, and then we politely part as friends. That's the worst thing. So the best thing is we take it to the next level, see if I can help. All right. And if I can't help, as I said earlier, I will tell you. All right. But at least you'll get a little more clarity into your overall operations to maybe increase the efficiency of it. That's the worst thing that can happen.
That's terrific. Mm-hmm. Being that we're here at the Caddo office reimagined Lakewood, which is Dallas.
Yes.
Real quick, why did you choose this location for your business?
It's interesting. I was at other co-working spots, one downtown, which is no longer around, the famous WeWork.
Right.
All right.
The former.
Exactly, the former WeWork. Two things. Number one, I live in East Dallas. But secondly, this was the only co-working spot that actually was visually appealing. Most of them are drab. They're boring. And that I just think the vibe and the color and the way that the attitude is when you walk in, this is a cool building in the Lakewood spot.
It's a former bank.
Yeah, that's right.
There's even a huge safe and one of those giant 8-foot doors.
That's exactly
downstairs.
it. I walk by it every time when I go get my mail. But yeah, this is a cool spot. Clients like it. They love coming here and having a meeting. Every room is a little bit different, which, as I said, the other places that I've had, they were all cookie cutter. This is a cool place. I enjoy the Caddo partnership.
So, Wes, ultimately,
Yeah.
what's the best outcome for your customers?
Yeah. So managing outcomes is actually one of our key tenets inside of the agency. They must be in a better place down the road. If not, we haven't, quite frankly, done our job. All right. So the best outcome is for that business owner to be in a situation to where they have taken control of the banking function, or maybe not all of it, but a lot of it, that just gives them a certain level of empowerment that helps not only themselves and their family, but also the key people and the employees. That's the best case scenario. Often, they may or may not tell me this, but ultimately we both know it's almost like the unspoken. All right. I can tell by the relationship and the phone calls and the vibe that we truly are, partners going forward.
Terrific.
All right.
Wes, I really appreciate you coming in and joining me in the studio to speak about on the show, Caddo Convos. Really enjoyed having you here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, buddy.
Thank you for joining us today on the Caddo Convos podcast. A huge shout out to our incredible network of members for making our community vibrant and supportive. If you're looking to boost your productivity and reduce the isolation of working from home, consider joining us at Caddo Office Reimagined. Our spaces are designed to meet your evolving needs, support remote work, and foster a sense of community that's hard to find at home. Whether you're a startup aiming for growth, a freelancer seeking a professional setting, or a company looking to optimize resources, Caddo offers a perfect blend of flexibility and innovation. By joining us, you'll be a part of a dynamic business ecosystem that helps you thrive. For more information, visit caddooffices.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Caddo Convos.